Hey, once again, guys. Hello, Gary, from the battleground state of Pennsylvania. Again, registered libertarian. Did vote for Kamala Harris. I just wanted to touch upon again. I've been watching some podcasts on independent media, such as Brian Tyler Cohen, David Parkman, Adam Mockler, uh, the Young Turks, and I'm hearing a lot of opining on what went wrong, and they just were like, "Oh, we should have," like the Young Turks, Jenkin, his guest, which I can't remember their name, saying, "Oh, if they would have stuck with Bernie in 2016, we wouldn't have had Trump." America really wants to go to the left into a more social environment where you get a universal basic income, you get um, uh, uh, free health care, etc., etc. Um, David Parkman kind of played a little bit better on this. He, said that uh, Bernie Sanders was apparently pointing out things that went wrong in his opinion. And David, from one of the shows I watched, um, actually said that there is some truth to that, what he was saying, which was wrong with the Democrats being out of touch with the working class, which is something I said in my really long first video I ever did talking about the election. Um, that, Democrats are out of touch with the working class. And, it's true because, again, and there's this guy, John Favreau, who's on with, and it's not the director, or the celebrity, whatever you want to call him. This is somebody who's, I want to say it's the Save America podcast, but he's doing an interview with Brian Tyler Cohen. No, it's Pod Save America, excuse me. And he's doing an interview with Brian Tyler Cohen, and he actually hit the nail on the head, or shared it. I shouldn't say hit the nail on the head. He shared the exact opinion I had, which was, sure, they're out of touch with the working class, but they didn't bring a proper message about the economy. And I said this. I said, look, you can tout how we're the envy of the world. Our stock market's way up. The economy is bang, 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 bang. It's all this. But if that doesn't translate to the guy, oh, here's my other cat, Floyd, who doesn't have the exact etiquette to understand, get down. Sorry about that, guys. Um, uh, you get down. Thank you. Love my cats, but they always come up around. Do you ever notice that when you're trying to do something, your pets come at the wrong time? And he's probably going to start meowing because he wants attention. So I might have to get the squirt bottle out. Anyways, where I was going, the economy, from the point of view of the politicians, did not match what was happening to the guy who lives in small town USA. And I live in a very small town in Carbon County, Pennsylvania. Very red county, by the way. And which is about 20 miles outside of Allentown. And I saw it every day. Now, here's the thing. Carbon County, Pennsylvania is not exactly a bastion of good paying jobs and, or a plentiful thing of jobs. Most of these people, they travel into Lehigh County or Northampton County. Some go as far as down to Quakertown, which is Bucks County. And that's where they work. So these guys are traveling anywhere from 20 to 45 miles to a job that pays a good wage. Most of what you find in Carbon County, and I chose to live here for many reasons. Excuse me. It's a smaller town. My house backs up to a basically a wooded area, and the view in my backyard is Blue Mountain. Oh, you stop. And so they tend to the most common job in my little town is somebody working either at the Dunkin' Donuts, which we actually have one, or they're clerks at the mini mart. We have 3 mini marts in town. And the funny thing is 2 of them compete on gas prices. And one's at kind of like when you first enter the town, coming in from Monroe County, and the other one's when you're going out of town to get on the bypass. And they compete on the gas prices, which today were $3.09. The other one that's just before the first mini mart, it's like the first thing you enter into town is a Valero and a convenient mart. Their gas is 30 cents higher a gallon. And when I asked the store manager, why is your gas 30 cents higher? Well, Valero is a known name. And I said, that ain't got nothing to do with anything, because where the oil is pulled from is the same processing facility that Sunoco pulls their gas from, that these other gas stations pull their gas from. And all of the smaller gas stations are very independent, so they don't choose like a Mobil or Exxon or a Sunoco. And, but, talking to the delivery drivers, it's like we all pull from the same tanks. The formula is the same across the board for the most part. He said there are additives that are put in for the premium fuels, but he said the regular unleaded is the same regular unleaded you're buying at Sunoco's, the same regular unleaded you're buying at Mobil, etc. So what these people see, and this really sucked, was it in early 2021? Well, right after when gas prices shot up to over $5 a gallon. And that hurt. And then the high inflation from the prices of food and everything. Like, people were just like, but, they understood a little bit we're coming out of a pandemic. But to them, the prices never came down and their wages never really went. There were some jobs that were starting to pay really well. Floyd, come on, man. I love you, dude, but you're a pain. Oops, sorry. Didn't mean to lump you down like that. How can I put this? Some jobs, like, okay, the local McDonald's that we have in Lehighton was actually starting people at $16 an hour. This was right after the pandemic. The Burger King was 14 or 15. Being just a clerk at the Sheetz, which is kind of like a Wawa or a chain gas station, quick fast food eatery, blah, 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 convenience store. They're offering $18 an hour, and then after your first 90 days, if you make it through the probationary period, they bump you to 19 for a cashier. But in my town, the local cashier makes $8 an hour. That's it. So you're in this small community with maybe 10 or 15,000 people. I'm not sure what the total population is. And they're making $8 an hour working in a mini mart. Well, the food prices at the grocery store and Walmart are matching the prices that are being charged in Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton, Philadelphia. So how is somebody that's working a minimum wage job supposed to afford their food? And that's like where these people thought, well, the economy sucks, right? Now, here's the funny thing too. When you say to these guys, well, why don't you go over to the McDonald's? It's $18. Oh, I don't want to do fast food. Even the Domino's guys, like the drivers, are getting $16 an hour. But people are like, well, then all the gas and your tips aren't in cash anymore, which is true, because if you order pizza online, you're just tipping with your credit card. And so there's no real ability for them to make money. And that's what Jon Favreau touched upon. He's like, no, Floyd, come on, man. Seriously, dude? Can you stay there and be good, and I'll pet you while we're doing the show? Do not stick your butt in the air. He was right. It's like it didn't translate down to the people because they don't have anything invested in the stock market. They don't have 401ks because, a cashier at a mini mart, local mini mart, they're not getting health benefits. They're not getting a 401k offering, but something like a Sheetz, which is a bigger chain, kind of like a 7-Eleven, to give you an example, or a Circle K. their companies offer, even a cashier a 401k, when they're paying them 15, 16, 17, 18 bucks an hour. And at 18 bucks an hour, you're making just a tad over 38,000 a year. I'm sorry, 37,000 a year. And 52 weeks in a year, blah, blah, blah. So you get to some of these other gigs that are now paying 20. Well, you cross the $20 an hour threshold, you're now making 40. But $40,000 today isn't spending like it was in 2002. And the reason I'm going back 22 years is that when I started my career, I actually started working out of school in 1997. I stayed a DJ for a few years after I left school. And then I decided, okay, I was losing my hearing from working in the clubs. I said, I'm going to go, get a regular job. First place I went to get a job was one of the manufacturing plants that supplies parts for Ford, General Motors, Toyota, etc. And I was making, with a degree, I was starting out, because I had to start at the bottom, like $11 an hour. So a little over $20,000 a year in 1997-98. And then I moved to another job a couple of years after that, where I got promoted at the first one from basically production floor to quality assurance, which I fell in love with. And so I stayed with them another year. I saw the writing on the wall, because the place was they had a really poor plant manager. And then when I did more research on him, I found that every plant he ever worked at, put your head down, they basically shut that facility down. So it was only a matter of time. And and they had already closed a facility in North Carolina and moved the equipment to Bethlehem. And then they were starting to move equipment out in Bethlehem to, I think, Mexico at that point. And that was 99, 2000. So at that point, I then went to work for another automotive plant that produced car batteries. I mean, they did other battery stuff too, for cell phone towers, emergency batteries that could be used to power military stuff, things like that. And I got started at, was it $17 an hour, I think? Yeah, it was somewhere around there, 17 bucks an hour. And so now I'm making almost $35,000 a year in the year 2000. With the raises, I made it up to $18 an hour. So now in 2002, I'm making a little over $37,000 a year. And then I decided to go back to DJing for a while on the weekends only, like a Saturday night or a Friday night. And, suddenly now I'm pulling in, $400, $500 on a Friday night and $600 or $700 as a DJ on a Saturday night. So I'm starting to stockpile. When I did my taxes that year, I made like $50-some thousand, which in 2002, I was driving a brand new Mustang GT. And but what happened was the economy started, we had 9/11, and then things really kind of started having a downturn. People weren't buying cars. So the government started to give that, I think it was like $300 or $400 stimulus check. And the interest rates on car loans and everything just, they were basically giving you free money. There was 0% financing on brand new cars. So while the battery company I worked for made batteries for, even OEM, their bigger market share was aftermarket. So your AutoZones, your Advanced Auto, O'Reilly's, whatever. And they're suddenly not getting the orders anymore, because people are like, well, I can go trade in my beater and buy a brand new car. Like, you could buy a brand new Mustang GT Premium for about $26,000 in 2002. You could get a pickup truck, a fairly nice loaded pickup truck, for about the same price. And they're like, well, why should I drive my 1982 C1500 when I can go buy a brand new Silverado at 0% interest, and it's $22,000, and plus whatever they got in trade for their truck and whatever money they put down, and you're not being charged interest, or you might only be charged 1.9% over 5 years. And It was, a no-brainer. So car sales went up. Then they started playing with the mortgage thing, blah, blah, blah. Of course, we all know how that turned out in 2008. But, these working class people, when I was making $11 an hour when I started, I wasn't investing in the 401k, even in the 90s. I really didn't start investing in the 401k until the battery company had a bit of a downturn because of the lack of sales and aftermarket, and I got laid off. And after sitting on unemployment for a few months, I got a call from a pharmaceutical company because I had just received my CQA, which is Certified Quality Auditor certification. And the next thing you know, I'm moving to Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm being offered a starting salary of like $41,000 a year. And that's not a lot in Baltimore, but I was able to have a nice 2-bedroom apartment for my first wife and I. And, I'm still driving the same Mustang. She had a Pontiac Sunbird. And we were getting by. We didn't get to do a lot of things. There wasn't, we had our food. We'd get to go out maybe, on a Friday or Saturday night. We weren't hurting, but we weren't sitting there going, oh yeah, spend money on this, spend money on this. So I got divorced because things just weren't working out. There was a big age gap too. She was 8 years younger than I was. And so she left. I then switched work to another company where I went from making a little over 40 to making $55,000 a year. Now in Baltimore, you could survive really nicely on $55,000. And then after being with that company for a year, another company in the DC suburbs in Montgomery County wanted to bring me on. And now they're offering me $60-some thousand a year, a sign-on bonus. And they're paying me on an hourly so I could get overtime. And I'm like, oh my God, I've never, And so I took it. And so I moved from Baltimore County to Montgomery County. So yeah, my rent went up because the apartment I had, I went from paying $735 a month to $935 a month. But I'm making more money to make up for that. And I spent 6 years with that company. And, I went from 60,000 to like 65,000 to 70,000. And when I left, I was just hitting 72,000 and change. At that point, I had talked and met people, and I started working in consulting because I had, at this point, over a decade of experience in quality assurance and regulatory. So to me, I could invest in a 401k. I could put money into stocks, things like that to help me have a better retirement. You can't do that when you're not making the money. And then when you have a party that's saying, but the stock market's this and this is showing you the economy's good. And I'd have those arguments with people. I'm like, you're not understanding the economy. And this is what the Democrats didn't understand. Yes, we were not in a recession technically. But when somebody making $8, $9, $10 an hour can't feed their family, that's a big fucking problem. And they didn't properly relate to those people. Kamala tried to do certain things. I'm going to work on the price gouging part because there was a lot of price gouging. But it never moved past that. She didn't really say, I understand. They should have explained, look, the pandemic did this, supply and demand. A lot of these companies still took advantage of that supply and demand price increase. And it just became, something that they didn't relate with. Because people are saying, oh, nobody wanted to vote for her because she's a woman. That's not true. Especially the Latino men, because a lot of them broke for Trump. Well, how do you explain how Latino men elected a president in Mexico who's female? A Jewish female at that. So, Kamala was more about social justice and political correctness. And I've always said this to Democrats. You're not relating to the average guy. You're definitely not relating to the people in my neighborhood. The transgender thing, that is a sore subject around here. I even saw signs when I first moved into this town. My kid will not go to a school where somebody can pee in a litter box. because there's that big controversy about people. I identify as a cat. I identify as a dog. So we didn't have a lot of that in my town, but it kind of ran rampant because, again, red county, red town. They were Trump supporters. In fact, if you went in the neighborhoods off of our main street, which is called Delaware Avenue, and you go into like First Street, Second Street, Fourth Street, up in Lehigh Street, and something, Trump signs for as far as the eye could see. I would say for every Kamala Walls sign, I would see 20 Trump signs. And they had these ones where it would say Trump, no crime, Kamala, high crime. Or Trump, low prices, Kamala, high prices. And when you try to talk to these folks about the economy, they don't want to hear shit. They don't care. So like if you brought up like, the Associated Press, fake news right off the bat. They are just, they're so in lockstep that you're not going to convince them. And it's because if you ask them, what do they find in Trump? And he goes, he gives it to you straight. He gives it to you bluntly. And he doesn't make me feel like I have to hide who I truly am. That's the key thing. And it's showing a lot. These people that were being a little on the quiet side about their views and their prejudices. Now that Trump's won, I'm seeing it more and more as I go out in the town. And it's made me question, should I stay here? Because I love the view I have and just not really associate with the people in my town? Or do you try to do something to prevent it from getting out of control? But again, this is where I kept saying in my first video, the Democrats really screwed up. This guy on Brian Tyler Cohen's podcast, Jon Favreau, from Pod Save America, hit on the same thing. He says, what the economy is doing from the stock market doesn't translate down to the working class guy. And the working class guy didn't see from the left and this is something I said about, and I would post on Twitter. I even sent emails or called the local Democrat office. You're not hitting the economy problem correctly. And they go, we're not in a recession. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. I said, the average working guy in this town, in this county, they don't care about the stock market because the stock market's not doing anything for them. They want, we're the United States of America. The minimum wage hasn't been raised in 30 years. 30 years. Or close to 30 years. It's still $7.25 an hour, which is why these mini marts can pay people $8 an hour. 30 years. There has been no growth because every time it comes up in the Congress, the Republicans block it because business, you don't do this, is going to cost our shareholders. So again, here comes Floyd again. What's up, buddy? Will you, dude? Nobody wants to see your butt on my video. I promise I will give you tons of attention later. Anyways, that's the translation problem. And if you're a Democrat and you're watching this, you need to relate to people on their struggles at buying groceries or putting gas in their car. And the other thing you got to do is the average Joe, the working class American, does not want to hear about transgender rights. Look how many years it took for the gay community to be accepted in the United States. You have somebody that's transgender or identifying as something they're not, Floyd. You're not going to do that overnight. If it took 50 plus years, who knows how many years before gay people were actually getting recognized as normal citizens, and then gay marriage didn't become a thing until, what was it? Obama. So it's only like a decade or a little over 2 decades ago. Or not even 2 decades, but a decade and a half. What do you think's going to happen with the transgender thing? Yeah, there's the LGB or LBGD, or whatever the fuck the acronym is. And it's funny because I can talk about this in just this moment on the video. It just doesn't want to come out. LBGTQ. So, lesbian, bisexual, gay, trans, queer. You know, and you've got people in a town or grew up using, like I said in my other video, the word retard, and they didn't like being shunned about that. There's people that still use the word fag, although they don't mean it as bad to a gay person. They just mean you're a dumbass. Quit being a fag, so to speak. And, you know, and I think even gay people recognize that, but some people just get twisted with it. This is where the Democrats, they're just completely out of lockstep with the blue-collar person. And until they get themselves back in lockstep with these people and connect with them on that level, which they're never going to do because they spent $1 billion on this campaign. Nobody gives a shit that you brought in $1 billion because it ain't helping them, you know. So, but you got to find a candidate that relates to them, and you can't be putting up candidates. Let me ask you a question if you're a Trump supporter. How does a guy who claims he's a billionaire, which we have no real proof because he never released his taxes, how do you relate to that? He doesn't understand your plight. You know, his stunt of working at a McDonald's for a half hour, it was all staged. That McDonald's, as I was in that area that day, you couldn't even go in the parking lot. It was blocked off. It was completely staged. And so I was, I'm going to make French fries. It kind of is a dig to Kamala. That dude never worked a job like that in his life. And yet, people are like, oh, he's a billionaire. He cares about me. He don't give a fuck about you. He don't give a fuck about me. You know, he gives a shit about Elon and Jeff Bezos because they're billionaires, you know, and the rich stick with the rich. They don't give a shit about the poor. We get the crumbs. We've always got the crumbs. And I'm a white-collar worker, you know. I do make over six figures, you know, 100,000, 150,000 a year. I don't fall into their clique. You know, it's like, you know, I couldn't go to Mar-a-Lago and go, hey, Donald, how you doing? He was like, you'd be like, who the fuck are you? You know, what's your net worth? Well, you know, maybe $500,000 if you take everything, my house and property and things like that. That's not a lot, but I can still relate to that guy that's a working class guy that made $30,000 a year or only making that because that's what I made. And I remember that while I was a little more comfortable because it was 2 decades ago, I still found there was a struggle to it. But I still voted lefty because I felt there was a lot of social policies they had. I think there needed to be a lot of change. I never agreed with what's now become wokeism. It was always known as being politically correct. I never agreed with that. You can't tell people what to do. We have freedom of speech. You know, if we want to call you a fucking retard, I'm going to call you a fucking retard. And I don't mean it as a slight to those with Down syndrome. I just mean that you're not in lockstep with normalcy. You know, you're off on these wild tangents like, oh, the earth is flat. And I'm like, if the earth was flat, cats would have knocked us off already. So, anyways, take it with a grain of salt. Sorry, I didn't mean this to get a half hour. But, you know, like, again, as I've said in all my other videos, I don't have a lot of followers. I'm not asking you to subscribe. But if you did listen and you like the content, like it. But also, leave a comment. I really want to read your comments. Because I want to know what people on the left and the right are thinking. And how can we make this work. So anyways, have a great night. And I'll see you in the next video.